Sir.
Hi, Laura. Thanks very much for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's a great pleasure to be with all the audience and also especially with this very prestige panelists. It's a great honor to be joined by them. We'll ask each one to make a brief presentation of themselves before we start discussing the themes that we have for today. So Sharon, if you might, please.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. It is really a pleasure also for me to be here. So my name is Sharon Tammam. I'm the acting CEO of Maccabi Tel Aviv Football Club, and I am an executive board member at the European Club Association. So I've been joining Maccabi in 2011, and since then I've been covering a few positions, and now I'm basically managing the entire club. So that's it.
Perfect, fantastic. Doruk.
Hello, everyone. Pleasure being here. I'm a board member at Galatasaray since 2018. Galatasaray is an association, so board members are elected, similar to Barcelona and Real Madrid. I'm a management consultant by training. I've been in consulting for 20 years, and within Galatasaray, I'm in charge of the commercial committee, esports, the governance program, plus basketball. So 4 different duties. The commercial committee covers all the revenues, digital and non-digital.
Fantastic, great to have you here. Hugo?
Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be in this panel. I'm the Human Resources Manager of Group UFC Porto, the club and the company. I'm here from 10 years now, and so always managing human resources.
Great, fantastic. It's brilliant that on this panel we have so much experience and so much knowledge to share among with the audience. So I wanna go straight. I think to the main points that I believe most of the audience wants to hear, and everyone, I believe, at the institute we often try to train our students for the best. To develop the best possible knowledge to get into the industry. But they are all very keen in learning what does it take to get into the football business. So Sharon, would you want to discuss that a little bit? What does it take?
So first of all, I would say that it's a very tough business. I think it's a business that until you don't you are not inside, you don't understand exactly what it means to be an employee or a staff member in football. So I would say that the first thing is strong commitment, because basically you're 24/7 with the club, and there's nothing you can do. You have to be there. There are things that have to be done immediately, and football never stops, as Johan Cruyff used to say. He was our sports director and coach, and football never stops. So you have to be there, and you have to be committed to do whatever it takes, whenever it takes. Further than that, I would say that you must be an outstanding candidate, because so many people want to work usually in football clubs that you always have people saying to you that they want to come, and usually people that want to come to work in a football club, they tell you, I will do whatever it takes, I will do whatever you want. So I don't think it's the best idea to go and say I will do whatever you want. It's better, I think, to be a bit more focused and have an experienced field, because to whatever you want, it means it's too wide and too maybe not, doesn't sound as professional as it would sound. And I would say that no matter what you want to do in football, usually, even though I joined the club and I had no clue about football, so maybe it's not my case, but usually it's better when you have a candidate that is professional in his own field, but also has an understanding of what football is about, what fans are about, and an understanding, a general understanding of the football environment.
Fantastic. Doruk, when I was studying for the football business,
Yep.
At some point, someone said to me, if you really like to play football, you shouldn't work with football because you have no time to play football. Do you agree with that?
Totally, as Sharon mentioned. So one thing is, of course, it's not all fun and games, because at the end of the day, when people look at it from outside, it's this shiny industry, right? But when you actually get in there, it's no different than, you know, any other piece of work, which actually doesn't stop. So it's even like more difficult, and you're kind of bound to sportive results as well. So even if you did a fantastic job as, let's say, the chief legal, you'll still have, you know, trouble if you lost the match the next day, because the morale is low. So, you know, especially with respect to the hours and with respect to the dependencies, it's not an easy industry. But then from the other perspective, because the industry kind of emerged in the last 20-25 years in terms of, you know, the professionalism or the governance. Once you're in there, actually, if you're like a, you know, digitally connected, well-established person, you could actually do you know, sizable good and value add, because most of the, you know, areas are still you know, ripe for disruption. And maybe, you know, touching, you know, back on your previous question about like what it takes to get in there. I mean, when I graduated, which was like year 2000, there was not much of any, you know, sports or sports economics or entertainment economics programs, you know, academically worldwide. Now there are tons of it, you know, from the Johan Cruyff Institute included, and many other you know, institutions globally and universities. So one area is you know, for sure considering the academic route of trying to get into sports, which could be either directly with clubs or with other stakeholders of the clubs. So that's one area. The other area is, especially post-COVID, you know, this whole fan engagement and, you know, digital savviness moved to another level. And if you do have a specific project that you can actually put towards the club or the other stakeholders, saying either it could be like a cryptocurrency fan token, or it is some sort of esport tournament or whatever, you can actually open room and space for yourself. But I mean, to answer the question that was directed to me, I mean, it's literally a very long hour and sometimes not as much pay job that you would see. And one issue that's potentially different at us, maybe Porto is also similar to us, I don't know, which is that because we are an association, it's every 3 years the board changes, and with the changes of the board, the direction of the club also goes left and right, because your direct reports do change also. So like, I have a marketing colleague, maybe he's listening, he's been with the club for 9 years, he's seen 10 different boards in his 9 years. So it's also difficult to sustain in the politically, let's say, infused environment. So that's another challenge. And maybe the last potential challenge is emotional connection, let's say, because at the end of the day, you know, Galatasaray and Fenerbahce, you know, Porto and Benfica, these are rivals, right? I mean, so even if you're like an amazing, outstanding, like CMO, let's say, located in Turkey, and if you leave Galatasaray, you won't go to Fenerbahce. Like, mentally, you can't go to Fenerbahce. So that kind of also limits your, you know, areas. That's why maybe being in functional roles such as, I don't know, legal, IT, etc., is at least like, because you have your functional path. But if you're specifically doing something, let's say sports marketing, then you'll have to be in this industry. So you have to really make sure that you define your career path correctly, and you know what you're getting into, because you might be, you know, beating around the bush otherwise, you know. So that's one other advice to potentially share with the audience.
Great, brilliant stuff. Hugo, do you agree?
Completely agree. I think it's pretty much all said by Dorukhan and Sharon. Just to reinforce, of course, Dorukhan, fortunately we have the same president for the last 40 years.
I know, luckily.
but you are completely right. In what concerns to recruiting and searching people for work with us, we have this value, which I think it's our most high value, and the president is always talking about that, which is passion. Okay, so we believe that we want to recruit passionate people, passionate about FC Porto in this case. How do you find those candidates? The logical answer is being supporters or fans of Grupo FC Porto. It's much easier to find them. Of course, we have to guarantee that the technical skills and the profile in general is the correct one for the job. But essentially, we search for passionate people. Last year, I think I was in London in a conference, and I used this expression, and I think it was strange for them, and so perhaps it will be for you too. But we have this expression in Portugal, which is translating to know the smell of the locker room. It's a little bit strange because it's not smell, and usually smell is a bad thing, but is to understand the essence of the locker room. It's much more easier for someone to work in a football club if they were athletes, if they were somehow connected to sports before. I think because they understand the availability, the flexibility that we all must have once we are working in a football club. The rest are technical skills and profiles, and understand if leader and the candidate, they will match or not. Well, it's recruiting just like any other company.
Great. Thanks. Very valuable insights. Sharon, what do you look for in potential candidates?
So I will answer to this, but I want also to relate to what Hugo just said, because further thinking about what we were telling you, I think that one of the most important thing is flexibility. And flexibility means that basically when you work in a football club, you don't know what your results will be. There are things that you can do if you win and things that you cannot do if you don't win. There are plans that you do and redo, maybe 5 to 10 times. There are so many plans that we had to change according to the different circumstances of the club. So it's very important that you're a person capable to change, and in your mind that you're not stuck with your ideas and with your plans, because otherwise you will be a very miserable person. So I think that this is crucial. You have to know yourself and understand if you're capable of living with the uncertainty, because basically football is all about uncertainty, all about planning and changing plans. So I think that that is crucial. What I am looking for, so as I said before, I think that the basic and the most important thing is to find people that are professional and, as also Hugo said, passionate. But I would say that usually we try to avoid people that are over passionate and over fans, because in the end of the day, you have to be careful that you get really the professionalism and not the heart, because sometimes the heart, when you are a fan, can be an obstacle to your position when you are in a club. So I think it's very important. And I have to say that in our club, we have fans of other teams, which doesn't really bother. And I think that in a way, if they are fans, they already understand the world of football, so it's okay. But basically, what we are looking for are professionals in their own field. And I would say that at least in Israel, I don't know how it is in other countries, but the football world, it's not so big and it's not so professional. So usually we really have to go into companies. If it's media, we our people, most of them, they come from websites or journals, or like to look in the right place for the right person. So from that point of view, it doesn't really make a difference between other companies, to my opinion.
That's great stuff. A passionate business demands passionate people up to the level where you exceed limitations of professionalism, I believe. And Duruk, tell me, you have a very long and very prestigious experience outside of football. What's the difference from the the normal workplace to the football workplace, do you think?
Well, one of them is definitely the passion component. I mean, maybe to put things in perspective, I mean, if you look at the American sports franchises vis-a-vis, let's say, the European football world, especially in the emerging market, or let's say the Mediterranean ecosystem football world, you already start seeing, the differences, because the governance model, the selection processes. For instance, I don't think there can ever be a non-Galatasaray fan working at Galatasaray, whereas if you're working for Boston Celtics, you can easily go to San Francisco, I don't know, 49ers even in American football instead of basketball. So that's one gigantic difference. The other thing is entities like us, because we are an association, but we also have commercial entities. So Galatasaray is a sports club with 14 different branches. So we operate more than 20 professional teams. Plus, we have a merchandising company that's separate. We have a football company that's separate, and we have a digital company that's separate. So basically, we have around like 1,000 employees, non-athletes, just like employees inside. So imagine the amount of who reports to who, and then especially if things are changing all the time. But what I did notice is when I started in the industry, because when I started management consulting for an American consulting firm, I was also in their sports business group. And back then, the US counterparts were somewhat, let's say, more established, and the European counterparts were like, well, I joined the club in 1967 and I'm here since then type, without, let's say, so much, the academic and, so more like the street smart, less rather than the, and this is kind of changing with the new generation. Now, what I'm seeing, especially with our colleagues who are like younger than 30, they're literally trying to up themselves and up their game in terms of, what can be done? What are the other revenue streams? How can we do further fan engagement? What are, let's say, how can we integrate fintech? How can we do this? So I think the industry is getting to a quantum leap situation, hopefully. And it kind of has to, because when you look at, I mean, Forbes said recent study, March 2020, showing the most valuable sports franchises of the world. And despite football being the most popular sport in the world, out of the top 50, there are only 9 football clubs. And, only 2 were in top 10. So even like Major League Baseball franchises are more valuable than, let's say, Turkish football combined, or Portuguese, or Israeli for that matter. So, I mean, despite the fact that this is the most popular sport in the world, the business infrastructure behind the sport is kind of coming behind. So it's kind of lagging. And I think it's going to change eventually. And with programs like this, conferences like this, and new talent coming into the industry, I think we are gonna get there to up our game to the next level, because this is an entertainment industry at the end of the day. So this is yes, there are the emotional components, but then we do have to create OTT platforms. We do have to create video content. We do have to create all those value chain levers, let's say.
Great stuff. Fantastic insights. Hugo, catching up on this, what Doruk mentioned regarding the changing of the generations. Do you see this change happening from the new recruitments that Porto has been making? Do you see a generation change from potential candidates to the club?
Yeah, totally. We had to adapt our recruitment systems to new generations. And especially, I think we had to help our administration to understand that there are different kinds. The profiles that we are searching for must be different than what it was until now. These new kids, I'm sorry it's not a, but they are still kids, have a new way of being in companies and of understanding the problems, understanding the timings, the schedules, and we have to adapt to them because they are the future of companies. And so football must have to rethink its positioning about that. And I think FC Porto, we have been making I think a good job in changing carefully the way of thinking. Of course, never forgetting the pillars of the group, and we have this all well determined, and they all kids and the seniors, they all know our values, which are passion, of course, competence, rigor, and so we what we seek is these young people that are available to understand these values, but bring to us this new way of thinking and being in the companies, of course.
Perfect, fantastic. Sharon, picking up on this changing environment, do you think it's becoming easier or harder to recruit new talent in football?
I would say that I don't know if it's easier or harder. I think that football clubs, as Dorukhan said, are becoming more and more professional. So if I can say in Israel, but I see also in Italy or in many other countries, if until a few decades ago they were managed as family companies, and so basically it was mainly families managing them and friends of families and stuff like that. Now we are becoming more and more professional organizations. And I think also in Maccabi especially, that was the goal of the owner when he acquired the club. So becoming a professional organization means that you have to behave and act more professionally, and means that it becomes more difficult to find the right people for the right spots. Also because depending on the club, but usually you have budget constraints that are very difficult. And in most of the clubs that are not huge clubs, people are used to do 3 jobs, and maybe they're in charge of match day operations, but they're also in charge of whatever, press, and you know, there are many different kind of jobs in football that are not really normal. And for us, for example, the process was to really try and have each and every person in charge of a specific role, and each and every person capable of developing its own role. And I have to say that in the past 5 years, we have roles that did not exist. We have a CRM manager that in the past, you know, who thought that football would start working with CRM and, you know, monetization and all these different kind of things that at the beginning, maybe you can do it, you know, having someone in charge of digital marketing. But at one point, you have to understand that you need the person that is capable of doing monetization, that is capable of analyzing, that is capable of understanding how the digital world and the digital commerce works. And especially now with COVID, that basically we don't have funds and we don't have, you know, regular merchandise, and we don't have, you know, all the usual things that a football club has. So the digital world becomes even more important, even though is the part of the clubs that is, I think, more developing in the past years. But now it becomes crucial that you have an expertise that allows you to create revenue and to create the fan engagement that is so important at this moment, where you cannot meet the fans, that you meet them only digitally. So it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge, and I think though that it's a very interesting one. It's a very interesting and challenging one.
Great stuff, Sharon. Picking up on this, on COVID, Doruk, how did COVID change the club?
Well, we basically are 25% of our revenues were ticketing related, Luckily, last season we didn't have the impact drastically because the league went on and most of our season ticket holders didn't ask for refunds because of the passion that Hugo mentioned. We didn't get a huge hit economically last season, but beginning of this season, together with the difficulties with the sponsors, plus the ticketing revenues and non-match day revenues gone, best case scenario will be 30% lower on the top line. Expected case scenario will be like almost 40% lower. So we tried to go to the fan digitally, since they cannot come to us, to try to somehow recoup the loss, which we somehow did almost like 7-8% of our last year's top line. We managed to recoup with esports and fan activities and digital lotteries and etc. But still, the top line impact has been clear. Now, how long is this gonna go is $1 million question, of course. Is it sustainable to go this way? God knows, but it has had a clear impact on the operating front. I mean, as with most companies, we kind of learned to work remotely, so it wasn't as much of a catastrophe as anticipated because we had to lock down the club, etc. But we could function. So, like in terms of like did things progress? Yes, they did. But are they hugely tough and challenging times? Obviously. And one major impact, especially with a club like us, and it might be different between club to club, but typically once the revenues are reduced, the automatic reaction of the board is to look at cost cutting. But cost cutting typically doesn't start with athletes, which should, by the way, start with athletes. But it automatically goes into, all right, let's cut some people from the merchandising unit. I'm like, guys, and we have 100 stores, we have 200 people, so 2 per store. Like, what do you want to cut? Like, so you should maybe think of, I don't know, releasing some athlete, but that doesn't happen in general because of course our core function is on the pitch, and of course we have to be successful on the pitch. But automatic reaction always goes to, all right, let's fire like 2 lawyers, 2 IT guys. Like, this doesn't even change the macro picture because these guys aren't getting like millions of dollars. So the one challenge that I personally had, at least within the board, was that I'm like, guys, like, forget about like reducing headcount. I mean, you're basically trying to fire like drivers and cleaning ladies. Like, keep them. Let's look at other cost-cutting levers. So that was one, challenge that we had. But overall, maybe just to add on to what Sharon said, or not add, but like tell from our perspective, recruiting-wise, it's also relatively difficult to recruit in functions. So, like, if the young talented kid who's a heavy, passionate Galatasaray, Porto, Maccabi fan, if he receives a job offer from Google and then receives a job offer from you, he will go to Google and then get a box or a VIP seat on the stadium. So the functional roles who could actually contribute drastically to the club are becoming more and more challenging to recruit. And because the image is not so sexy. I mean, from outside, the image is great because you get, your accreditation, you go watch a match, etc. That's fantastic. But then if your phone rings at like midnight on a Sunday or, whatever, then you start complaining. And then this, the cycle of positivity or negativity easily surrounds. So, the pay is not great. The stress is high. The challenge is big and the career path is not easily defined. So you're like, fine, man, I'm a fantastic fan, but I can find a job elsewhere. Let me go there. So more and more for certain roles, we get lots of candidates, but for certain other roles, we are having difficulty finding the right candidate who could do the right job, who would be like as good as at a McKinsey or like JP Morgan and Galatasaray. So, that's a bit the challenge that we are observing on that side. But yeah, COVID was horrible in terms of top line for us.
Fantastic, great stuff. Hugo, who on following up with what Doruk mentioning in terms of competition for talent, who do you compete when you're trying to recruit?
First of all, let me just say that it's very funny to understand that all our realities are so similar, even though we are so distant in countries. But the reality that Doruk and Sharon are giving us is so similar to the group of FC Porto that is fun to hear and to watch, and I think it's relieving also because we understand that we are all in the same boat after all. But in what concerns to your question, I like to believe that we are competing with the biggest companies in Portugal, and I want to keep believing in this because that's the way that I can manage and focus my searches for human resources in those big companies. That's because, for one hand, we believe that these companies are the better school and prepare better the candidates. I think they are more competitive, more professional, more adapted, more flexible also, because it's the higher standards of those companies that makes them competitive and available and flexible. And so that's where we usually search for is, okay, so of course, if you are talking about a job in commerce is different than in a job in engineering. But we benchmark those companies that work in those fields and we search for candidates over there. And usually we are competitive in what concerns to salary packs and fringe benefits, etc. So I think we can handle with this competition. Of course, there's this problem, and Doruk told us that it's not easy for anyone to work on a Sunday till midnight, and if you lose that match, to be available next day to work with full motivation, full force. It's very, very difficult. It's very difficult, and that's a challenge after all. About the COVID, let me just say this because I don't know if your question will be about COVID. The human resources department, I don't know if in this case we are equal to other clubs and companies, but in my case, the human resources department assumed from the beginning the control of the COVID situation. We are scheduling exams, COVID exams, controlling all the measures and all the dynamics that we had to change. For instance, the access to the stadium and other infrastructures of FC Porto. And so human resources, I think, should be called in the future the human resources and COVID department. It's been a very tough challenge, but obviously it's very motivating also, of course.
Sharon, how did COVID impact your work, and how did it impact the workplace at Maccabi?
I don't know if you say it's motivating. For me, it's very unmotivating. I would say that it had a huge impact. Of course, we had different phases and different issues and different moments. But basically, since day one, of course, the first impact is the bottom line. We have a huge loss in terms of income, which is very problematic. And of course, on one side, we had to do like all the other organizations that we had to get used to working from home and, find the ways to do it. But not only for us, also for the players. Because at the beginning, you had the players at home that couldn't train. So how do you manage to have Zoom bicycle trainings with all the players, and the logistics of bringing them each and every one of them a bicycle, and many different logistics in terms of office and in terms of really the players, and in terms of the youth department, which at the beginning was closed for I think 2 or 3 months. So it means that at one point you have to make tough decisions, and we had many employees that we had to. It's not to release them, but to put them in a program that is managed by the government. So for us, it was unpaid leave and still allowing them to get a salary from the government. But it's a lot of difficult decisions and difficult way to adjust resources, and we had salary cut, we had many different issues, and we still have, because basically we are looking at a season that we are going to have no funds at least until the winter finishes, it seems. Hoping that maybe in the next future, after maybe January, maybe 2021, something will happen, but we cannot build on it. So it has been a huge challenge, and it really is. We have a situation where all the sports side is completely separated from the rest, and it's very difficult. Also, you want to speak about fan engagement, but then in this fan engagement you cannot have almost activities with the players, because the players are sort of in quarantine and they can only train and play. So it requires a lot of flexibility, a lot of creativity, a lot of thinking out of the box, a lot of stress, and a lot of budget versions. I think we are at 60 now. So yeah, it's quite a nightmare, I would say.
Great stuff. Great insights. Doruk, you have 1,000 employees.
Yeah.
How do you do it in this situation?
Well, another $1 million question. So I mean, it's peculiar to us actually, because we do have our merchandising outlet. We have 100 physical shops and the online retail. So it's called so there we have like around 250 people. Then in our football sportive non-athlete we have around 250 people. So 500 is retail, and that at the head office we have around 200 dish, and then with all other subsidiaries, digital, etc., and other facilities, rowing, basketball, etc., coaches, non-professional coaches, etc. We have another. So it's a huge organization, and it's, of course, I mean, our situation is peculiar, so it won't be like a general specification, because Galatasaray came out of a high school, so they're the graduates of those high school that are somehow in the organization a bit. So it's not an easy let's say game to play, and when you're elected in the board you actually get some responsibilities. So some people become the head of water sports, and then you have to deal with those people there. One thing that's really difficult, probably not for all sports clubs, but at least for ones like us, is the governance. Because let's say if Hugo was at Galatasaray, head of HR, or board member in charge of HR even, then the basketball coach wouldn't even recognize, or the basketball coach or the football coach or whatever coach wouldn't be directly like reporting to him, because he'd like, I'm a celebrity coach. I don't care about your HR policies and stuff. So it's very difficult to align the reporting lines and the governance. So this is, I think, partially true for all sports industry, but especially when you're a multi-sport organization, which is an association, it is even more difficult, because let's say if the CFO, let's say, defines a procurement policy, and then, you have to take 3 different offers from wherever in order to do whatever. And then, let's say the football facility guy, the coach says buy these things. And then if they say, oh, we cannot because the CFO already, created this procurement policy, then the coach calls the president, or, something along those lines. So the CFO is like, do whatever. So basically, automatically, you kind of collapse the whole governance in one phone call. And that happens like all the time. So I think the biggest challenge in sports management in general is defining the governance lines and, the rules and responsibilities. I mean, did we succeed? No, I've been telling this since 2018. I'll probably tell this until 2050. I don't know. But I mean, eventually, in order to make sure the machine is run properly, the whole who reports to who and what are the boundaries and what are, the lines should be defined. That is, I think, the biggest challenge in managing 10 or 1,000 employees. Doesn't matter. I think that's, the $1 million solution, if there's one there.
Yeah, from my knowledge, and also from everyone's reaction, I do think that we're only changing the time zone here, because everything else seems to be the same.
More or less, yeah.
Hugo, have you recruited anyone during the pandemic, or how did COVID change the recruitment plans for Porto?
Of course, we had to stop or at least make some changes to the recruitment process during this period. For example, we have this in the retail area. We have these seasonal peaks that are the summer and Christmas, that usually are very dynamic periods in terms of recruiting, and this year we didn't. But we recruit because we have to give more dimension to this area, to the online retail, and so that is an example of the areas that we recruited because they were too small for the dimension that COVID gave to the online business. Okay. Other example is the health department. We had to, in order to have, for example, temperature measuring in the entrances of all our buildings, we had to hire some nurses or physios to measure the temperature, because here in Portugal, it's not anyone that can measure the temperature. And so these are some small examples of the adjustments in the recruitment activity that we had to have to in order of the COVID.
Perfect, fantastic. I do think from I was told you answered all the questions that people had asked in the app. So in order to close this, I think this is perhaps one of the best opportunities to ask this, as I should call the $1 million questions, as Doruk is often mentioning, for the audience. So if you could quickly just give us, starting with you, Sharon, what's the most important advice for someone that wants to get into the football industry? What should that person do?
So I would say that they should, first of all, find their passion and not go to a football club and tell them, I love the football club, let me do anything, I will do anything. So find your passion and maybe try and find a passion that also relates to your qualities. So if you are a good talker, maybe you can think about being a spokesperson. And if you're good with numbers, maybe you should go into finance. But basically to understand what you want to do and study the area that you would like to specialize in football. Second, I would say study the industry. Really, there is a lot of material about the industry to understand how a football club works, how the football industry works. I think it's crucial. And I think it seems to me that Doruk said it. I think that you have to come from a passionate point of view, but you have to understand that when you become an employee of a football club, the fun side becomes very, very different. So you will not be able anymore, never, ever, to go to a game and enjoy it the way you used to enjoy it before. So think about it before, and then if you want, then proceed, study, and go for it. Otherwise, just go buy a season ticket and work somewhere else.
Fantastic. Doruk?
I mean, probably this, I would maybe repeat two things I might say. One is value proposition. You know, what do you bring to the table? Because, you know, as Sharon mentioned, I mean, being a Galatasaray fan or a Maccabi fan or whatever is good, but like, what do you bring to the table? And the second is, you know, differentiation maybe, because once you're in there, you know, how are you going to differentiate yourself to create a career for yourself? So those are probably the two things, you know, I could suggest, because economically speaking, you know, this is not the highest paying industry. And, you know, the work hours aren't easy. And, you know, the motivational challenges, as we all mentioned, you're kind of reliant on the sportive results. And as Sharon also re-mentioned, it's not, you know, a free world anymore, because you cannot even tweet something as a fan anymore because you're actually an employee of the club. So considering all those bounding factors and the boundaries and the negativities, why would you come in here? Because you have a passion, because you want to make a career out of this, and because you could actually make a difference. If those are the cases, come in. And there's not only sports clubs, there are all these stakeholders around. I mean, you could work in a tech startup, you could work in like an OTT platform, you could work in various spaces within this industry. And I believe the industry has still room for growth and room for, you know, good people. So that's true, but it's not an easy industry per se.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you. Hugo?
The best part of being the last to talk is that it's all again pretty much said. I think I completely agree with Sharon and Doruk. I just wanted to give this note, additional note. I think before you think about working in a sports company, you should search for significant experiences, and most of all, experience. Try think out of the box, just as Sharon told us before, and give yourself the opportunity to experience. Of course, it must be focus and an experience with purpose. Okay, it's not experience. Okay, I'm going to see the world and have some experiences. No, you must focus in what kind of experiences could give you advantage when you decide to try to be recruited to a football club. And that's, in my point of view, what I search when I talk to a candidate, and that's most of the times the difference between the one that I will recruit and the one that I will not. It's significant experiences that can bring us some additional value.
Great stuff. Great. Fantastic. Guys, it's very unfortunate that we have to end this panel. I'm having a lot of fun. Personally, it's one of the best panels I've moderated, and I think one of the most valuable that I have ever seen in Congress. So I just want to congratulate you all. Thank you all for your honesty, your kindness, and also your great, fantastic insights. I want to thank again Laura and the Sports Biz Europe for the invitation from us all. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I hope we can keep in touch, and thank you.